By the end of this episode, you're going to learn how an independent optometrist grew his practice from 0 locations to 6 locations during COVID-19. Welcome back to another episode where I help younger physicians decrease stress and increase income by transitioning from corporate to independent practices, even without any business experience. In this episode, you're going to learn the most important trait for surviving solo practices. You'll also learn the difference between optometrists and opticians that I didn't know before this episode, and how subleasing space can be the key to you growing your practice quickly. Welcome to the Independent Physician's Blueprint, where we help physicians decrease stress and generate wealth in this crazy world we're living in. And today we're joined by Christopher Tumolo, who's an optometrist in the area that I had the privilege of meeting several weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, actually, in another project that I've been working on. And, I came home saying to my wife after I met you, I said, this guy kind of feels like me. He's like he's a cool dude. So, and you're doing some pretty neat things in the Tampa area, setting up and competing with the big boys in the optometry world. So tell us about what you do and who you are.
Yes. So I'm an independent optometrist. My wife is also an optometrist, and we created Beyond 2020 Vision Specialists, probably the LLC, probably the end of 2019. We started in the end of 2020, and here we are in 2025. We started with 1 associate, 1 sublease, and now we have 6 offices, so 4 subleases and 2 private practices.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's during COVID.
It was all during COVID. Yeah. We ramped up during, so we started during COVID. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that time frame and to start a business around that time and to see the amount of locations that you have is pretty impressive. And I think, what I want our audience to take away from this is that, number one, it's possible. Mm-hmm. And number 2, it's also possible to stay independent yes. of the big boys, I like to say. And so, before we get into the details of business, what do you do for fun? Because I know that you've got some boxing videos online, and I saw that. I thought that was pretty intriguing. So,
yeah, I do Muay Thai kickboxing at payoff, which is a authentic Muay Thai school in Newport Richey under Crew Scott. And then I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with Juan Tavares, which is in Odessa. So Tavares Martial Arts. Okay. Kind of on and off with both kind of my whole life. Always been into martial arts, and you know how it is with school. It's demanding. So there's usually some give. So I was like studying and working and trying to balance Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kickboxing, and they compound. So you really need to be consistent in order to get really good. So I finally got to a point in my life where I have the time to be more consistent. Still not as consistent as I need to be, but more consistent. So that's a little bit of what I do for my stress relief. And I do a little workout too at the gym. But
yeah, so, that's pretty impressive because I know that running a business and doing the things that you're doing, it can be challenging. And opening up in 2020, 2019, like you said, multiple locations. When do you have time to do this stuff?
Yeah. There was a point where I was working 7 days a week, seeing patients. We had a sublease initially that was a 7-day sublease, and it was tough to find doctors during that time. People were confused with COVID, and they didn't know exactly what was happening, what the virus was. They didn't want to necessarily go out. So I did a lot myself. My thought process back then was, I'm young, I'm healthy. If this thing's going to kill me, it's going to kill 99.9% of the people on the planet. So I felt pretty confident. I don't typically get sick. I eat right. I work out. So I was pretty confident. So yeah, there was like 6 months where I did 7 days in a row on top of opening the business, sourcing product, doing a lot of research. Mm-hmm. I did more business when I was younger, and I did like the optometry stuff later in life. So my business acumen was pretty good starting out, which is a little bit flipped from what you would get traditionally with like medical school students. The traditional path is undergrad straight into, medical school, and then, your discipline, and then you come out with little to no business experience.
So maybe I didn't know that. Maybe I didn't ask, but what did you do before optometry school?
So before optometry school, I was an optician. My dad was an optician. That's how I got into it.
Okay.
So I had an atypical path. my high school resume wasn't spectacular.
What does that mean?
Well, so in high school, I was a little bit wild, and I like to have fun with my friends. I wasn't really buckled down. I guess back then, there was no ADHD diagnosis per se, or maybe there was, but it was really less commonly known. So looking back, I probably had that. I couldn't stay focused. I was like, just my attention was always everywhere instead of where it should have been. So, I got out of high school and I, kind of slid through, and then, it took a couple of years off and partied and hung out with friends. And,
That's awesome.
Yeah. And my dad he was an optician, and he was trying to get me on the straight and narrow. I was like, listen, you gotta do something. You gotta do something with your life. So he said, let's take a class together in Hillsborough Community College. It's a refracting class. It's something he wanted to do at the time. And, I was like, okay, it was cool. I was going to do it with my dad. So I was like, 19 years old. I was like, let me try this. So we did it together, and that kind of was the what spawned me to get into this kind of profession. So I got a job with a physician who worked with my father, and really liked it. And then I just started to do more and more within that. And then I said, okay, listen, I need to go back to school. Now I'm in my early 20s, and I need to go back to school and to do more.
Okay.
So I tried to apply to do pre-med, and they laughed at me because my high school transcripts were really bad. And so I had to start from scratch. So I had to start pretty much like 2 years of community college with and then none of that really counted. So it was a lot because I had to work. My parents didn't have any money, so I had to work my way through, school and do it all from kind of the beginning.
So when you say the optometrist, if you can help me understand, an optometrist does what exactly versus an
optician? Yeah, that's a good question. So optician is like the pharmacist. They dispense the eyewear.
Okay.
That's a 2-year degree. And then the optometrist is the eye doctor, non-surgical. So we fit you with contacts, eyeglasses. We can do medical exams. We just can't, in the state of Florida, we can't cut into the eye. Anything superficial we can do though. Like we get a metal foreign body in your cornea, we can take it out. We can do hordeolums. We can prescribe antibiotics. We just can't do surgery.
Okay. So you don't do injections in the eyes?
Correct. The ophthalmologist does the injections. Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then the ophthalmologist is just that's like when it breaks into the surgical realm, then the ophthalmologist takes over. Mm-hmm. So anything non-surgical we do.
And so what, it's almost as if you see a Vision Works or a Lens Crafters, Warby Parker in every corner of a major city.
Correct.
Is it that lucrative for them to be out there?
It is. You mean for the
Vision for
the entity or for the doctor?
For the entities.
Yeah, for the entity it is. Yeah. I mean, because they sell a lot of materials. So they sell contact lenses, they sell eyeglasses, they do the eye exams. So yeah, it's like Luxottica is the biggest, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. Luxottica.
Okay, Luxottica.
Yeah. They own some pearls, some are franchised, some they own Target, Lens Crafters, Essilor. So it's a very big company, and it's homed in Italy, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. So there is a lot of money in optometry or the eyewear industry.
So what made you go into that versus being independent versus joining them or starting a franchise? A lot of physicians are looking to start their own practices.
Yeah,
they can join a big practice or they can join a hospital system, but some want to be independent.
Yeah.
So what drove that decision?
Seeing things done incorrectly and patients being treated poorly. That was the biggest driver. So coming out of school, working for other doctors, I would see, I'd walk into an exam room and talk to my patients, and the patient might say, I had a great exam, but the girl at the front desk wasn't very pleasant. Or sometimes they would start with that. I introduce myself. Hey, how you doing? Smiling. They're like, the girl at the front or the guy at the front was rude. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I would be fixing other doctors' mistakes. Sometimes I would be filling in when other doctors weren't there. And after just a few months out of school, I said, I can do this better. Not to mention that I had been in the field before.
Yeah.
So I already knew kind of the recipe that I needed in order to do this well, or at least as close to perfect as it could be. Mm-hmm. So that was the driver. I said, okay, I need to work for myself because I'm going to create a company that's going to be 5 stars across the board. And we're 4.9. 5 stars is really tough.
Unacceptable.
I lost sleep. I didn't sleep for 3 nights when we went from 5 to 4/9. Yeah, I was real. And my wife laughs at me because I was like literally up all night trying to figure out, what I could do to get back to the 5.
Okay.
But that's just me.
So you decided to do that. What does it take to open up a optometry business? Because you hear physicians having to open up offices, then clinic licenses, and equipment. And full disclosure, I actually went to your office and had an eye exam, and I have to say your equipment is pretty nice.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how much it costs to get some of that stuff. So
we allocate all the money to the equipment. So everything that you see in the office, while it's nice, we've really like bifurcated it down to like the most simplistic look. So it looks nice and clean, but it's like you're not going to find like the waterfalls and like the ivory and all the like the really fancy stuff. Mm-hmm. But we really put all the money into the technology and then also into the equipment. So that's part of like the recipe for success, because you can get an eye exam and use a manual phoropter, or you can get an eye exam and use an OPD and use an automatic phoropter, and the results can be much more efficient with the latter, and also much more accurate with the latter, and also the patient's like psychosomatic experience with the better equipment. Sometimes they just see the better equipment and think like, this is going to be better.
Yeah, you just said some words. I had no idea what you're talking about. So can you tell us what you just said?
Of course, yeah. So the phoropter is the machine that you put in front of the patient's face. And they look through it, and you typically say like, what's better, 1 or 2?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So we don't have to necessarily get into the deep details of the 1 or 2 with the automatic, because the automatic and the pre-testing equipment that's really, really efficient and accurate gets us to your subjective prescription probably 95 to or upwards % of the way, meaning that the objective stuff from the beginning gets us so close to what your answers would be subjectively that we don't have to do a lot of like 1 or 2. And sometimes that confuses the patient, and it gives the patient anxiety because they say, I feel like I'm going to get this test wrong and I'm going to get the wrong prescription. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to have the best equipment on the market in order to make the patient feel like they're getting the best exam, but also to actually give them the best results. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think your question was, how did you do all this? Right?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you a follow-up question, because it sounds like the equipment is going to cost a lot of money. And so do you take out loans? Do you lease them? We
purchase everything. We don't lease. We purchase it all. Initially, what I did is I took a sublease out inside of a Costco. I started practicing in a Costco, and that was a sublease. So I subleased the space and started to build my reputation there. And when we do the sublease, we don't pay anything. They provide you with the equipment, and you're the doctor. You keep your fees for the medical side of it, and then the glasses are purchased through Costco, and that's where they make their money. So it's like a symbiotic, like a mutualistic relationship between the two. Okay. That helped fund my account so I could start my private practice.
Okay, so how do you get into a Costco? Because that sounds like a big deal.
It's really, really difficult. So there were a lot of doctors who applied, and I actually wasn't the first choice. I was the second choice. The first choice decided against it because at the time she was getting married and had a newborn on the way, and the commitment that they wanted was too aggressive for her. So she decided she said, like, listen, I'm just going to do something closer to home. I've got a baby coming. I want to be more close to my family. So I was the second option. So yeah. So
I'm sure you love that, right?
That was great to hear, wasn't it? I'm like, man, this is not good.
So you're at Costco. You apply to Costco. Mm-hmm. You don't have much experience because you don't have a clinic, right?
Correct.
Why would they pick you over someone else?
They wanted us to give them 5 days of coverage.
Okay.
And I told them I'm going to give them 7 days of coverage. So they really like that. And they said, we want you to see 2 patients an hour. So I'm going to see 4 patients an hour. So they really like that. And I had a plan because I'm a very efficient with what I do. And I also know how to, I was going to fill the other days with other doctors. So I had a business plan. And that was one of the differentiators between myself and the first applicant. The first applicant was going to just give them the 5 days. I don't know the exact reasons why she was chosen over me, but they did say afterwards that it was nice that I was going to offer 7 days coverage and see more patients, because the more patients, the more days, the more volume, the more people that are going to buy glasses, the better Costco does. So initially they were very low in the region. Mm-hmm. And then after a year that we were there, they went from like the 25th percentile in the region up to the 75th percentile of the region. And then by the end of our second year there, they were like at the 99th percentile. They were like top in the region. And then they started to move the metric for like the entire, like, so the region is like several stores. Then they started to move the metric for like the geographical region of the U.S., so like Southeast region.
Because of the coverage you're providing.
Because of the coverage. And we had at that point, we had like 355 5-star reviews. So we had great reviews. We put a billboard in front of Costco. That was a very difficult thing to get approved by them. But they don't like marketing within the brand. Like, we marketed ourselves, but also we had to say like where we are, right? They didn't quite like that. So it was difficult to get those things approved, but I put a billboard right, like directly in front of the location. So yeah, we did really well. We built it up, and it was like thriving and going. And then I used that to fund the private practice.
Gotcha. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the clinic days, 7 days a week, and I did some research on burnout, and because we try to help physicians decrease stress and decrease burnout.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found was that there was an increase in burnout amongst optometrists versus ophthalmologists, with men burning out about 40%. And women 60%. So, and it sounds like it's correlated to how many days they work.
Yeah.
So how do you decrease your chance of burning out when you're working 7 days a week? Because you have physicians now coming out wanting to work 4-day work weeks. They don't want to do weekends. They don't want to do call, but they want to make a lot of money. So how does that work for you? How do you decrease your chances? That schedule.
Yeah. So there, the new doctors that are coming out of school, you're 100% correct. Like, scaling the business beyond where we're at today, that's kind of the weak link in the chain, or the area that we're hitting that bottleneck, because the newer doctors, like you just said, they don't want to work weekends. They don't want to work past 4. They want the most money and give the kind of the least amount of work, and that, haven't quote unquote paid their dues yet. It's tough right now because there's a lot of leverage for the new grads, and there's a lot of leverage for the employees and not the employers. The landscape sort of flipped. But for me personally, I'm very goal oriented, and I am very disciplined. And so for example, in school, like I never took a day off. I studied 7 days a week. Even Sundays, I was at the library studying. And then when boards came around at the end of school, I didn't have a lot of time to study for boards, because I had to take a summer class, and I passed all my boards immediately, first time, with high scores, because of the work I put in prior. But I've always had a strong work ethic. My parents got me working when I was 14, and by the time I was 15, I had 2 jobs. And I had 2 jobs pretty much my entire life. Even when I was making good money, I had a second job, always had a second job. So I'm really resilient, and I have a lot of discipline, and it goes back to even like the martial arts, like we talked about in the BJJ. Like, I'm 46 now, and I really haven't slowed down. I don't intend to slow down.
But you have young guys, you have young physicians, optometrists, ophthalmologists listening to this podcast right now and saying, yeah, you're 46. I'm not doing that now. I don't have to, because I can go to LensCraft, I can go to Warby Parker and make X amount of dollars and be happy.
Yep.
Why should I?
I also have a very internal drive to be the best, and a very internal drive to be not necessarily better than others, but better than myself yesterday and the day before. So, I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let my friends and family down. Everything I do is like concentric rings. So like, my immediate family is the most important. So I work hard so they don't have to. And I feel, it's probably going to get a little off topic, but
no.
I feel like there's a lack of the responsibility for men today, where they feel like they can just give into their emotional state. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I kind of push my emotions aside and don't succumb to them, because, there's got to be something to be tethered to. And I feel like in my family, that's me. Like, I'm the immovable object. So, I make sure that everyone's taken care of. And, you can't do that by, giving into feeling like, hey, I'm kind of tired today, I'm not going to go into work, or I don't feel like working today. So a lot of that's very much ingrained in me from the way I was raised.
Yeah, that brings up some things in my brain, because it brings a lot of things up in my brain, but I had a conversation with two women, older women in the practice, who were struggling with not knowing how to manage their diet, not knowing how to manage what they're eating, what they're doing. And they were both single and they had no direction.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find is a lot of older, our senior population that lose their husbands or lose, their loved ones, don't have direction.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that if you can provide, you can work hard now, provide for your family, be that tether. That's what's going to help them long term. So if they're not around, you at least have something that they can fall back on. And because men do live shorter than women, so women are outliving us.
Yes.
And so I don't think it's off topic. I think it's pertinent to the overall societal changes that we're seeing. So when we come out of residency saying, "Oh, I only want to work 4 days a week," how do you grow a practice working 4 days a week?
You can't.
Because patients are not going to come to you if you're not available.
Correct. When we first opened, I had my cell phone number on the on our auto attend, and I also had my cell phone number on our website. And patients would contact me at all hours of the night. I mean, I remember if you look at our reviews, there's a review from years back, and he says, like, I contacted Dr. Tumalo at like 9 p.m. on a Saturday, and he replied within a minute. And I said, "Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow." And he opened the office I have opened the office on closed days for ocular emergencies. I would take calls. I'd be having dinner with my family. I would take a call. You have to understand that there's always going to be compromise in life. And in order to be successful in business, you do have to compromise some of that work-life balance, which is a term that I'm not very particularly fond of, but it's very common right now. But you can give to work and you can give to life and still be successful at both. But it does come with a balance. And in the beginning, you are going to be putting more of the percentage of your time and effort into probably the business, but that will pay dividends as you get the momentum going. Because once the momentum starts, just like in physics, it's a lot easier to keep it going than it is from a dead stop. So you will push harder in the beginning, but then you'll get the momentum and you can take a couple of steps back and let the company kind of run, and then you can focus more on the family. People want everything and they want it now, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And coming with your experience and what you've done, I think it's obvious that these are some of the traits that a physician needs to have. You talk about resilience. You talk about work ethic, 7 days a week. That's what I'm used to. And it's not for everyone. We're not saying that everyone should do it.
Correct.
But I think people should understand that if you don't do it, you're not going to get the same rewards or same benefits as you do.
Exactly.
So what I think I know the answer to this. So what would be the one advice that you'd give to a new doc, a new optometrist, ophthalmologist coming out today?
You are lucky to be in a country where you can work hard and it can pay off. And you are in the 1% already because you're a doctor. And that's due to hard work. Like, you worked hard to get there. And you truly can make a difference. So I try to make a difference in every one of my patients' lives. So, I mean, I take ownership and I take interest in my patients beyond the level of their eyes. I know about their families. I know about their general health history. We talk about that. It's a great thing. It's a great career to be a doctor in the US. And it's, you should enjoy it and relish in it and get to know your patients. Like, I talk to my patients. My patients, they ask me about my wife, about my dogs, about where I move. I enjoy what I do. I mean, to truly enjoy what you do, it really doesn't make it feel like work. It makes it feel like, just a good part of your day. Yeah. And we try to template that with all our doctors. We try to create an environment where from the top down, it cascades so that, at the bottom, we start at the top with the owners and then the doctors and then the technicians and then the patients. And we want the environment to be just the best. We want patients to walk in and see people laughing and smiling, having a great time. We don't want them to walk in and see an angry secretary behind the desk who's like, looking down and say, give me your license. Like that's just not you're not going to see that at our office.
Yeah. They don't last either.
They don't
I think if you create a culture where people are happy and they're working hard, that person that's the lazy link won't be there long.
Correct.
Because they'll be uncomfortable.
Yep. They don't fit in. And, where you don't fit in, you typically don't stay.
So one last question.
Sure.
What's your superpower? What would you say that your wife, maybe even yourself would say is your superpower?
Yeah, probably everybody that knows me well. It would be the internal discipline, internal drive. Like I just don't stop. I've had a lot of struggles in my life, and there have been a lot of difficult times, but I just don't stop. I never stop. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I saw in you truly when I came home and I said, this guy's going places.
Yeah, there's just nothing, when I was in school, there was a lot of obstacles and there were a lot of people who didn't want me to succeed and there's just nothing they could do could have or would have stopped me. So yeah, I would say internal drive, discipline, perseverance. It's just those are the traits that and I think again a lot of that goes back to foundationally the way I was raised. Yeah.
Well, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Yes.
We don't do this as often. I want to do it more.
Yeah, it was great.
But really appreciate the conversation.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to hear more, subscribe, follow in your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode.